Top Deck Heroes has decided to give Gramgrace another chance on their channel with the new support, and in today's video we're going to be reacting to their card fight and commentate on it. Now, as you guys know, I'm a huge Gramgrace fan on my channel. I took it to Crow's Nest, I took it to my Spring Fest. It's safe to say I really love this deck. And one of my favorite YouTube groups, the Top Deck Heroes, has decided to do a proxy play match with the new support against Minerva, and I'm really excited to see how it works. The deck we're going to take a look at towards the end of the video and discuss my thoughts and opinions on it while we're commentating card fighting against the match that they're playing against. Now, these right here are the Minerva as well as the Gramgrace deck that they're playing for the event. I'm going to save my thoughts and opinions of what I think about these decks towards the end of the video, but based off my initial look, Minerva's looking good, looks pretty standard. The Gramgrace list is really interesting, as this is incorporating the new normal order support that Keter Sanctuary gotten within the next set, and I'm curious to see how it works. This wasn't the approach that I initially was going to take at all with the introduction of the new Gramgrace support coming out in the trial deck, so seeing this particular version of the deck, I'm going to be really paying attention to what sort of combo plays you can get from that and what sort of advantages this use of this order card will give for the deck. Alright, going into game one. So the Gramgrace player is using the Blaster Dark ride line with Blaster Javelin, Blaster Dark, that whole shebang. I think that makes sense. A lot of the cards that I saw in this build use Soul instead of Counterblast, so that's perfectly fine. I actually have been thinking about incorporating the new Gramgrace ride line into my Gramgrace deck, simply for the fact that the way that I was going to build it was going to be a little more resource heavy with the Cardbrace and the other cards that are coming into it, but let's see how this build works. Alright, so he's already playing aggressively as he should. Get the aggression going. Going second though. Alright, and then go to Chamomile, set up with Chamomile, get Chamomile, Melissa in the Soul. This way, you know, Minerva can do its combo plays. This is going first. Gonna really have to watch our damage here, because you need to damage every single turn. One for Blaster Dark and one for Gramgrace. Oh no! Well, that's one Persona Ride gone. And he drew a heal trigger. Drops the heal. Goes into Blaster Dark, and then we just lost the OT. Damn, I was excited. I want to see how this, this one works for Gramgrace. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this new OT in my excuse me. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this new overtrigger in my Gramgrace build. I still think that the Keter Sanctuary one is perfectly fine for Gramgrace. It doesn't burn through the deck as fast as it used to with the way that I've changed it. We got the normal order and a grade 3. So therefore, I think that it can work with this build. The fact that we're getting extra drive checks and building up a huge hand, I think it might be plausible to play that card. But I also think that the original OT, the Crate Elemental one that gives 1,000,000 power to one unit and then another unit, is actually a good card for this deck as well. The new support really relies on Gramgrace's attack patterns as well as giving power to other cards, so we can make our rear guards really strong with that OT once we swing with our Vanguard, because it's always going to be your back row and your Vanguard if you're playing the Gamoris, which not the Gamoris, the Fernable, which she is, to get the +1 drive check. So I really do think that there's a lot of overtrigger options for Gramgrace particularly. You're just not locked into this new one, and you're not locked into the Keter one either right now. It just comes down to which advantage you want more. Irelum. That's a cool card. Alright, so we have our other Regalia card on board. So he's just going straight. Well, the Cider will go back to his hand. He has every reason to go straight into it this turn. And he's got first Persona Ride, so that second swing Minerva turn where he has 2 Vanguard attacks is going to be a really big deal. I would start guarding early. Okay, he lucked out with the damage trigger. And now he's got Angelica and Soul. So that's 5k to the front row. Chamomile comes in, can you slow us up? You know, the combos that Minerva can do is just insane. like the Chamomile Melissa already coming back, and then these new cards, which I believe one lets you draw, I think one lets you like filter out from your drop zone, or your drop zone or hand for the soul. Like, you just get your pieces from everywhere. It says, at the end of the battle, unit boost, if you have Vanguard Genesis card, you put 2 rewards in your soul, and then you draw a card. Okay, so you get to build up hand and reset your soul. That's not bad at all. The Cider's going to go back to hand as well. PG, that makes sense. Drop the him. Oh my goodness. That's Sex Power. Yep, that goes back. Front trigger comes in to save the day. The grade 2's ability. I think about you attack. You have Vanguard Commander current cost. Yeah, that resetting for next turn is just wicked. What, he has to... I didn't see it all the way. You have to retire it and then discard something or exchange something, right? Interesting. Very interesting. Alright. Time to see what Gramgrace can do. This is what I'm here for. Alright, so Gramgrace is in now. And we gotta either build up a huge hand or we gotta push back really hard this turn. So use the ability, call out for a novel. We got 10k plus 1 drive to Vanguard. Alright, he's got the new grade 2 support card. That support card is honestly insane, guys. Like, you guys don't get it. Being able to give 5k to the back row attacking unit makes that grade 3 in the back row a magic number. And then the him on top of that, that's 5k to 2 of his units. Like, this deck just has so much power going with it now that it's honestly insane. And then, I'm reading it now, that card will get 15,000 power once the Vanguard swings and his back row gets done attacking. Him gave 5k. He gave 5k to... I believe the grade 3 in the back and then the grade 2. So that's 15k. The grade 2 is going to give, this is 33k attack. But he didn't call it out right because he forgot to use the ability. So that's 33k attack. That's 25,000 shield right off the bat just needed to block. That is insane. And then that grade 1 got 5k. 10k plus 1 drive. That's so wild. That's fine to drop that. Alright. Gramgrace's Hex. It's got the 5k. Heal trigger comes in to save the day. Perfect. That's 23. Got the crit, but he perfect guarded, so I would give the crit to the grade 2 because you're going to give it the 15,000 power, and then you can put the power over there. That's what I would do. But he gave it to the other card first, I guess. And he didn't use the CB. That's interesting. Because 23, 33, plus 10, 43, that both units had 13 plus 15, so that's 28. Oh, well, it didn't matter. If you use the counterblast, you're still 43k. I would have used it. I feel like you have to, with Gramgrace, you have to confirm damage as best as you possibly can. And you know that your opponent is going to swing at you really hard this turn anyway. So you're going to go up to at least 4 or 5 damage this turn. It's inevitable. Because he's going to do 2 Vanguard swings. He's going to call back his cards and potentially do... I think the max amount of attacks this deck can get is 5. I think it's 5. Oh my god, why am I so tired? That's just life hitting me hard. I think Minerva can do 5 attacks. It makes sense. You got the Cameo Melissa. You have 3 open damage. Your Vanguard costs 1 CB. So the grade 2's coming in. Soul charging. Stacking to the bottom. Alright, Minerva should be good on Soul. Using the Vanguard's ability to manipulate the deck. Okay. Alright, so he's swinging with that first. That card's gonna do with shenanigans. And what are you gonna put into Soul? Doing all of his shenanigans. Guys, okay, the truth is, I'm not saying much about Minerva because although I played against the deck, I really don't know too much about how it's supposed to be played. So I'm not entirely sure if the Minerva player's combos are correct or if he's doing things correctly. I'm just going off of what they're doing now. It seems like he's doing everything right. He's got the multiple Vanguard attacks. He's got the open damage to activate the Chamomiles. I believe Melissa comes back as well with the I think it's like a Soul Blast or something. So he's definitely setting himself up to do these multi-attack combos. Going in for the Vanguard again. The Gramgrace player is at 4, as I predicted, but he lucked out with the damage trigger. So it's 23. You restand the column. Chamomile comes in. Now all that power, which I think he gave to his Vanguard. He's got for one more swing. It should only be 1 drive check this time. Just 1. Makes sense. Okay, good. We survive. We survive. And now we can Persona Ride and pop off. Oh no. Alright, it just comes down to what's in your hand now. Okay. Ooh. He had the Fernavel. Yeah, not Persona Riding in Gramgrace does feel like a death sentence. It really does, especially with how fast and how much more power everything has now. The only thing I think, okay, and then he's got the Cadogan again to come in and get him the him. So he can give 5k power to his other cards. So yeah, you've got the him to come in and kick in. You've got the soul. You should be fine. I think so. I only see a Blaster Dark in there. Yep, you got the him. 5k. I would just split the 5k between my 2 front row units. Yep. Because the card in the back is already going to be a magic number at 33,000, which we know will take up 25,000 point shield. So I think this is where I differ. Me, I would have swung in with the other rear guard first, because at least this way I could have stacked my deck. We've seen, I believe, 2 front triggers out of you now. So, I mean, the chances will be a lot lower. I can't see what's in his hand, so I don't know if he's holding on to one, but that maybe that would be a better option, just to figure out if I need the extra card draw or wherever I'm going to get, or to thin my deck out for triggers. Oh my god. Oh, that's making me so mad. He's not using the grade 2 skill. He keeps forgetting to use it to get the additional 15k power. Well, I mean, the crit and the... Okay, he had a front. And he had a crit. Alright, overkill. Let's talk about overkill. Not a bad play. Not a bad play at all. I was super excited to see how these new Gramgrace cards are going to work out with this deck. And they work out very well. Now that we've looked at this matchup and seen what the decks do against each other, let's go ahead and look at their actual decks, and then I'll go ahead and give my opinion from there for Gramgrace and Minerva. Now, this is the Keter Sanctuary deck for Gramgrace that they play with in today's matchup, and after my initial thoughts, I can finally give my real opinion on what I think about it. So I actually like the combination of the normal order cards as well as the order spell that comes with Keter Sanctuary and the Gramgrace support. I think it works out very well as you have a card that thins the deck out for an order card to help pump up your other rear guards to make their numbers count, especially when you're doing that Persona Ride turns and the OT. That means that you'd have a massive amount of power. The great thing about these new Keter Sanctuary cards as well is that all of them gain power and they all have effects that do benefit the Vanguard and Gramgrace's playstyle. Now, this is where I have my questions at. So my first question is, after reading back on the Grade 2, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the Grade 2 order spell has the effect to let you discard at the end of the turn you play it to get a copy of it back. So if that's the case, I don't know why we're playing 3. 2 I understand, because if you damage check one, you can search out one with the other Cadogan, but I feel like there's slots you can make for other cards instead of just playing that many. Because you have a high amount of grade 3s in your deck, and now that you're introducing more orders, you're playing more cards that don't have shield in your deck, so you're becoming more fragile. And I think that that would be a concern for me, so I would definitely try to make sure I have the right balance of units and orders. The Gradius Grotto staple, have to play it. The PG lineup staple makes sense. The new OT, we didn't get to see it come into play, but I actually like this OT. Again, I think there's a lot of options for Gramgrace when it comes to over triggers, so this OT is fine. You got your crits, you got your heals. The front triggers, I feel like with the way that this deck works and the amount of power that you have, but the fact that you're playing a lot of cards that don't possess shield value, I'm not sure how I feel about them. Because he has so much power, it just feels like the Persona Ride benefit, even though you didn't get it, which is more predominant in this deck because you're only playing one Lock-D. Maybe a 2-2 split between fronts and draws, or I would just commit to 8 crit and 3 draws, because again, any rearguard that I apply the effect to will be already hitting over a threshold that's so high, it's going to demand a lot of cards out of their hand, or it's going to demand a PG. So those are my main concerns or main questions right now, which is, why are we playing so many of the Grade 2 order? What was your consideration for the trigger lineup? And what are some other units you think you might tech in? I think for this particular build, because you're reliant on the order spell, the 4 Cadugans feels correct. The 4 of the Grade 3 promo, that's a staple that's mandatory. The new Grade 2 Trial Deck card as 4 or 3, staple, because it's going to turn any card in your back row into a magic number automatically, so there's a boom on that. And then this card turns itself into a huge beat stick once you swing in with your Gramgrace. It does cost a CB, but we have resource management cards at Keter Sanctuary for that. So this new Grade 2 is an automatic staple for the deck already. No questions, if, ands, or about it. The ratio is obviously debatable. You can play 3 or 4. I just think that you need to be playing more than 2 of this because you're going to want that power in the later game where the deck really succeeds. The new Grade 3, the anti-over trigger for Keter Sanctuary, is very powerful. You can look at the top card of your deck and you can soul charge, or you can leave it on top. Really strong card. But for that particular reason, it does make me question more on why we would be playing fronts, because I feel like when I was watching him play, he really only took advantage of the skill at the end of the turn, pretty much, instead of prior to drive checks. So maybe it was just because of formation of the board setup, or just he forgot about it. But I feel like if we're going to play this card at that high amount, and we really want to take advantage of it every single turn, maybe a new trigger lineup to work with it, or maybe we play this card with, we can use this card as a back row target to consider for the Grade 3. Yeah, it would actually, that'd make a lot of sense if you don't have for novel. You call that Grade 3 to the back row, you use its ability, you look at the top card of the deck and you soul charge it, or you put it to the top, and then if it's a card you want to add to your hand, you'll put it into the soul, draw a card. Okay, now I'm starting to get the idea. I like this a lot. I feel like the one Lochte, at this point, it could be anything else, because this tells me you don't care about it. If we're dropping this from 3 to 2, now these are the main changes I would make to the deck. If it were me, I would keep the Gramgrace mandatory. I like the ratios of this. I think this can be at 2 or 3, the new grade 3. The 4 of the promo grade 3, mandatory. The grade 2 I would have as a 4 of. The Cadogan makes sense at 4. This grade 2 girl, I feel like her ratio should be up to 4. Maybe drop one Cadogan and play another one of her, because this way you can get more bodies onto the board if you're playing against anything else, like Gondiva or something, which is going to be popular. The him, drop that down to 2 or to 1. Because Cadogan is a grade 1, so that means that if you go second and you take that point of damage and you took a critical or something, or you have open CB for it and you can just make it happen, then maybe you could drop the him down to 1 and play more cards. But I think that for safety's sake and the sake of this video, I'm going to say just play 2 of the him. PGs are fine. I think Lochte can be anything else. Like, literally, she can be anything else. She can... this deck uses a lot of soul. So you can play the grade 1 that lets you soul charge when you have a grade 3 Vanguard when it attacks or boost. You can also play grade 1 that gives 5k power when your Vanguard or opponent's Vanguard is at grade 3 or higher. Another card you can actually play that I think might work in this deck, if it's optional, it's up to you. You can also play the grade 1 that is the Dragon Tree Wretch that lets you counterblast when you draw a card. That is an option. Or it's a newer card. You can also play the grade 1 that lets you counterblast 1 and call that card out from the drop zone to give it 5k power. It's another card that works with the order set for all these order cards, and I feel like if that's what this build is going to be resolved around, because you already have 2 different normal orders you can activate, you can try that out. I think that for the Blaster Dark ride line, I think it's perfectly fine. I honestly think that Gramgrace's ride line is not that bad either. You get to conserve a card. And then triggers, yeah, like I stated, I would just play the 8 crit, 4 heal, and then 3 draw, and then keep the OT. This deck generates so much power, and I can already tell just by the cards you're playing and the effects of these other units that I just don't think that the additional 10k from the front will help you close out games. You need to focus on having pieces and surviving until you can unlock Gramgrace's full power on the Persona ride. But those are the changes that I would make, in my opinion, if I was playing this deck. Hopefully you guys learned something from this video. I actually learned a lot about what this new Gramgrace can do. I'm really looking forward to seeing these new cards come out. And the last thing I'm going to say is we have to give credit to the people who made this video, which is the Top Deck Heroes. They make a lot of amazing content. I personally don't know them guys, but definitely go check out their channel. I've been watching them for a while. They make a lot of amazing videos. That's very helpful for the community. Alright you guys, with that being said, I'll see you later. Peace.